Welcome to Powered by Podio. Automation is everything. Supercharge your business with Podio. Get ready for another episode of Supercharged with Jordan Samuel Fleming, your weekly dive into the awesome impact workflow and automation can have on your business when it's powered by Podio. Join us each week as we learn from the top Podio partners in the world, as we investigate system integrations and add-ons, and hear from real business owners who have implemented Podio into their business. Now, join your host Jordan Samuel Fleming, CEO of Game Changers, for this week's episode.
Hey everybody, it's Jordan Samuel Fleming here, host of Supercharged. I'm here to talk all about the power of workflow and automation when your business is powered by Podio. And this week, it's a really fun episode because I am joined by two people in a group episode to talk a little about how new people come into Podio. And this is particularly relevant if you've got a company and you're onboarding new staff. What are some of the challenges involved with that? What are the things that resonates with them or doesn't resonate with them? And so I reached out to some of my Podio partner friends, and Mike from Quivvy Tools and Pete from Future Solutions happen to both have two relatively new employees, Bavo and Tim, and they're joining me today, and we're just giving a bit of a newbie experience to Podio. It's a really fun discussion. We learned a bit about their backgrounds, about how they transitioned into building into Podio, of where their confidence, where they're getting confidence right now and where they're still learning, and how they're sort of seeing Podio as people who are coming into the system really for the first time and starting to work on it. It's really great kind of view from the other angle. I talk to so many people sometimes who are, super users of Podio and people who, they build lots of things and they've been building it for years and they know it back and forwards, and that is awesome and there's a lot to be learned from there. But sometimes it's great to flip the script and talk to people who are relatively new and say, like, how's it going? What have you found good? What have you not, found difficult? And this episode really does focus in on that. And I'm really grateful to the two of them for coming in and having a little discussion. It's fun chat. And, of course, as always, you can reach out to their respective companies. I'll put all the information into the podcast notes. Finally, please stop what you're doing and give a like, give a share, give a little review. It really does help boost our presence and make sure that more people can find the podcast and more people can learn about the power of Podio. Now let's get to the podcast, where I'm joined by Tim and Bavo. Let's listen in. What it was like, quite honestly. So yeah, if I don't know if you've heard the podcast before, but we're going to just launch into it now. I'm excited to hear about you guys' stories. Why don't we just take a quick second and you guys introduce yourselves, who you are. Tim, why don't you go first?
So my name is Tim. I started my career as in music, so music production and music performance. And then I moved exactly. Well, it's a mistake.
Well, that's what I did too. I did music at Edinburgh.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So
there you go. Okay.
So I'm allowed to say that.
yeah, sure. But in money terms, it can be a mistake. You either make it or you don't, and you have to be pretty impassioned to make it. So I don't think I was quite there. So I moved myself on to teaching at one point, and was teaching for 3 or 4 years. Taught in Brussels, taught in the UK and different places. And then I got more and more interested as COVID hit with how technology is used in education, how technology is used more broadly, how technology can be, can simplify things that are thought of as complicated. And then went into sort of teaching myself to code, and then did a boot camp. So in the UK, there's various different boot camps. I did one of those and came out the other end and got a job with Future Solutions with Pete and Izzy. And currently I'm learning the platform of Podio and all the other sort of side things that go along, like PWA and PROCFU and Andreas's babies.
Well, both of those are friends of the show. So fantastic. Bavo, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Bavo. I was also a teacher. I quit teaching 3 months ago. So I was a teacher, but I was a language teacher, English and German. And so if I make English mistakes, that there goes the reputation of all Belgian English teachers. But I always had an interest in IT when it came to education. And I'm also a writer and a storyteller on the side for children's stories. And I was developing my own websites, and I got more and more into that. And I thought I'm going to do that as a side profession because I was looking like for new horizons. And then I had a good friend, Mike, and he said, well, maybe you could do a few things for me. Maybe you can write a few texts for me because I was doing websites and copywriting and stuff. So I started writing text for him. And he said, by the way, with your new side profession, maybe you'd like to work with this tool called Podio, and I'll explain to you how it works. And it looked pretty interesting to me because I'm still planning. I've been in the planning for several years of building my own, publishing my own books. So building that into Podio looked like a good opportunity. And then he started Quivvy tools, and I had to learn how that worked, et cetera, et cetera. But it was still on the baseline. So Globiflow still looked a bit like Chinese to me. But now I've made the switch. Mike has had to was a one man's business. Quivvy was a one man's business, and he had to expand his team. So I jumped in, and now I'm also learning the coding stuff. It's good to have both the digital creative stuff, like writing a bit and designing a few things, and then on the other hand, learning the coding. So I've been doing support tickets and stuff like that, and now I'm starting to build the first project in Podio. It's really interesting.
Nice. Well, yeah. I think this is an interesting one because I don't think we've ever had and this, I think it was actually Pete who suggested this topic, which was I don't think we've ever had anybody on the podcast to explore what it's like when you're first starting to learn Podio, because most of the people that I have on the podcast are either, partners like myself, Pete and Mike, who have been around for ages and have, built hundreds of systems and done all this stuff. And so don't really remember what it was like to learn Podio almost, or what it was like to come to try and understand the basics, or people who have their own businesses using Podio and they've been using it for a while. I don't think I've ever had anyone who's quite so new. And so I'm quite fascinated to kind of look at the new to Podio journey and identify little bits of, what were some of the things that were confusing or difficult to really wrap your head around? I mean, that there's got to be a few of them. Can you guys think? Do either of you have any kind of ones that stand out for you as we sit here right now?
For me, I think the main one that I struggled with to begin with was maybe not like specifically Podio. So maybe this isn't answering your question exactly, but it was the structure of a database and how you should structure your relationships in order to make the most efficient use of a database and the tables within it. That was so the sort of architecture, I guess, of the database is a real learning curve. And I suppose that's, in some ways, Podio makes that easier because it gives you a GUI, an interface to actually see what's going on and see a relationship field and then follow the trace of that relationship field to wherever it goes. So in that case, for me, the hardest part yet is figuring out the architecture of an entire database. And some of them are, mind-bogglingly complicated.
So do you then, in the work you're doing right now, are you starting to build systems from scratch? Have you been building systems from scratch yet?
For me, I have not built anything from scratch other than my own tests.
Playing around and
test things. I've been really poking around in lots of, obviously it's mostly Izzy and Pete's work, and seeing how those things, the trail of how things work. And we've been trying to make ERM diagrams using Lucidchart, and Izzy's quite big on those as well. So you can sort of see the relationships quite clearly from a sort of big perspective, sort of zooming out on it. So that's where we are, and that's how I'm trying to figure out the general sort of architecture of how the database is.
Sorry, Bavo?
Yeah, that's it. The relationships is a recognizable thing. So in the beginning, I had no clue of databases even. So in the beginning, when I learned what a relationship was in my own apps, I started laying double relationships. So
and Mike slapped you across the face.
Yeah, the forward and the backwards relationship that if you make one, that the other one's automatically at the bottom. I just didn't realize. So in the beginning, it was really like building ugly things with Podio bricks. So instead of like with Lego, you can build the Taj Mahal and you can build the ugliest building ever. And in the beginning, the blank canvas was a bit confusing. So it took a while for me to actually adopt it. So in the beginning, I was just writing text and not really using Podio because you have this blank canvas. I tried a few things, but there's like nothing on it. But then Mike asked me, so maybe you would like to do a Podio trainings, because there was a company working with Podio and he was doing Podio training for that, had no time. Could you take that over? I said, well, yeah, okay. So then I really dived into the interface. And then it started. Then I started realizing how it actually works. That was a good starting point for me.
And interesting, actually, because the data. I mean, you've hit on a really fundamental thing that you learn as you go with Podio about. Data structuring is a critical part of a good. If you're going to build a good Podio system, how the data is structured and the hierarchies that you create and and where you're going to keep the end business objects and how you're going to relate to them. That's an important thing. And you both have, with Mike and Pete and Izzy, you do have some very experienced developers who understand the concepts of data hierarchy. Was there any as you started to learn best practice from looking at some of the systems they built or talking to them, was there anything that went that was either surprising or kind of went against what you would have thought was intuitive, or was it like once you heard it, you went, oh yeah, that makes sense?
Yeah, I think the last one, like, like insights coming, like divine insights, like, okay, this is how it works. So when we are solving things, so Mike shows me a problem, I have no clue what I have to do, and then he step by step with good practices shows me how to do it, and I say, whoa, is it that simple? Like especially the PWA, it looked like very, very difficult to me when I when I hadn't worked with it yet, but now it really makes sense, and I can read it brick by brick. And before that, I had to make demos of Quivvy tools showing Globiflow bricks, and it was like, I don't know what the hell is in there. But now I can actually read it. So it's a good thing. So Mike is actually training me. I'm doing a few things on my own, which I can already build. And then he helps me a few hours a day to do a few support tickets, and from the support tickets I get to know the client setups, and I immediately get to know the good practice. So I'm actually learning with the good practice in mind immediately. That's a very good thing.
Yeah, I can second that. There's a moment I had a moment the other day where I think it was with Izzy that I was chatting to him, and he was talking about how the core of a lot of the workspaces he does, or the organizations he does, is this contact app. So everything, so you've got people and always their names or their phone numbers or whatever, always coming out of these contacts apps. But then you might want another area of this person that isn't so free and open. It's not shared with everyone. So you have another app that is like, I don't know, their DBS check or whatever it is, or their I think Pete used the example of maybe they have what's that called when you do something bad at work, whatever, you have like you get a disciplinary or something. You don't want that to be open to everyone. So you have a different app that's not shared with everyone, but it's related to that person. So all these people, so all this information is always being fed by this contacts app. So you have these sort of core apps that are you'll find related in, maybe all, if not quite a lot of these apps, or these tables in I always get the whole app table thing. If you want to go back to the Podio kind of linguistic thing, the app and a table has taken me quite a while. Like, obviously there's just an app is a table is an app, but why they got to call them an app, not just a table?
Well,
They could have.
I also think it denotes, a table denotes almost a static bit of data. An app denotes something that you can actually work with, I think. But interesting, I think, when those data principles are important, but also just the experience of, of how much I think it helps to have people showing you best practice on a routine basis. Because I think that's got to be probably, if you get, when I first started using Podio, I built our first systems when I first started using Podio. So I was figuring it out, and there was nothing that anybody could do. Like, I was the one figuring it out. So I didn't need to be taught as I was building the apps. Now, they were horrible, but whereas if you get parachuted into what I would consider a mature environment, like it's already built, it's already doing this, and you got to work in it, the learning curve there is a little different. It's a different thing, because you're not just walking in and figuring lots of stuff out. You're actually having to look at relatively already developed workflow and app structures and data structures, and decide and figure out what you can and cannot do with it, right? And that must, like, just if we take a step back and think of, because people bitch all the time about the Podio interface and how it's not changed in a long time, and it hasn't. But I like it because of its consistency, but I don't think it's necessarily easy to learn. What was your experience getting to the point where you felt like you could whiz around Podio, right? Because there's a difference between kind of going in and knowing where to go and being able to, just fucking fly. How did you find that experience?
Knowing that the notifications is actually your inbox, that's one thing, and that it's like a reverse email system. So instead of emails being pushed to you, you're pulling in the indates you want, the updates you want to follow. So that was a good thing. So learning that. Following smartly, and then you get these notifications, and this is like your inbox. Then having the tasks as reminders, that was a good one. So to immediately go to the right context, and just getting to know the zones. So the interface is, when you first look at it, it's weird, but there's so little on it that once you know what every zone means, then you can get started. So so this is my important stuff. Here's a tile on my right side panel. In my activity, I see the things that happen, and if I unfollow a few things, it's going to become relevant. And same thing for the notifications, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bavo. I think that a lot of like the actual different elements of Podio is fairly, as long as you get to know where they are and what they kind of do, they're kind of useful. The task thing is quite interesting, because if you're in an app and then you set a task, it's sort of attached to that item or that. Yeah. So that's there's certain things which you can do which aren't necessarily like you could take advantage of more, or I could take advantage of more, but I just don't think of doing it. So it's there's that part of it, which is, I just think of a task being the big task, right? Like it's just a big list. I don't think of it attaching it to a particular item, which I'm sure would be extremely useful. If something's got a bug or something that's particular to that item, then that's a perfect use case for it, I guess.
Stop! Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just going to interrupt this amazing podcast for a couple of seconds. I know if you're a regular listener, you have heard me talk about the Game Changers Supercharged Masterclass series, and I've already had a number of people give their details in with the forum and contact me saying, when can we get involved? Well, life has happened, moving house, lots of things going on, and although I promised to get up the first modules in June, it is going to be the end of July now, July 2021, but I am super excited about it. This absolutely free masterclass series is going to go through a bunch of great modules. The fundamentals of Podio, the fundamentals of great Podio design, great ways of using GlobiFlow and extending Podio. It is distillation of years and years of my team, myself included, of designing Podio. It's our attempt at bringing together some best-in-class principles of Podio design. It's a really exciting proposition. I can't wait to launch it. It is coming soon. Go over to www.wearegamechangers.com, go to the masterclass, send in your details. We'll let you know as soon as the first modules are up. I guarantee the first modules are going up end of July 2021. Now, back to this awesome podcast.
Well, and contextually understanding what you need to do is an important part of relationships in Podio, whether you're using the Podio native tasks up at the top or whether using a separate task app. You almost always have the task you create, whether it's an app item or a task in the Podio system, it's always going to be related to the things that matter. Now, we choose to use a task app, and I'm surprised to hear you say tasks, because I would have thought both Pete and Mike wouldn't be using the Podio task, they'd be using a task app. And the reason we do that,
but we use that too. We use them both. So
combined.
Do you have logic as to why? Do you have, just out of curiosity, do you have a clear logic as to which one you use when?
Well, by renaming the word task reminder. When I was investigating Podio for my first Podio training, that's what I came up with. That actually it's not, the task is not a to-do item, because a to-do item has detailed information and maybe linked documents and stuff. But the task is a reminder. Tomorrow I have to look at that. I have to read the document, and in 2 days I have to write a part of it, and then I have to mention my colleague. And so these tasks are just reminders that bring you to the right context. So in that respect, the word task is maybe even a bad word. But now the to-do apps are actually I don't think there's like a Mike should correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not really a native to-do app where everything is. We have several. So we have a help desk app for client tickets, and we have a few backlog apps. So let's say we have 5-6 to-do apps, and then we use reminders if necessary to do that, and views. So also to follow up a few views, to check on the new ones for the to-dos, and set reminders when necessary personally.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same this side. So I think tasks mainly are used just for small things. Like and I don't think I'm probably like using them more than anyone else, to be honest. Than Peter, is he? So just little like, I've got to remember to to put my notes into daily stand-up or something. It would be something like really random. Whereas actually we do, as you say, Jordan, we have like an app for.
I would have been very surprised if you did.
Yeah,
I would have been shocked actually, without question.
But still, it's really powerful. To me, that was one of the things that actually got me into Podio, because before that, I had been experimenting with task planners. I had been doing an open subject with students with investigating productivity apps, and then you have this task planner and that task planner and this one with task planning functionality, etc. And I had never found a good task planner. And then there was Podio, and it's you have this platform, And then they have a full-blown task planner that actually is perfectly well thought out. So like for the recurring tasks is really well done. So yeah, I find it striking how Podio can sometimes surprise you, like, oh, it can do that too. Like having a full-blown task planner, or like having a Kanban board where you can rearrange the order of cards, things like that. So things that I was thinking of using an external app, and then realizing actually Podio can do it as well.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys think Podio was? Because, like, out of curiosity, because I mean, people always come to me and say, "Hey, so is Podio CRM?" And you're like, "Well, yeah, I can. Yeah, it can be. You can build a great CRM." Oh, is Podio a project management tool? Yeah, you can build a great project management tool. But is it one? No. But you can build one. The stock answer is no, but you can build one. But almost everybody who doesn't understand the power of a system, a platform that you can build multiple business kind of process in, thinks in terms of tunnel vision software apps. I buy Microsoft Office to get Word, Excel, and whatever else shit they compile into it now, and I just care about Word, Excel. I buy Asana because it tells me it's a project management system. I buy Salesforce because it tells me it's a CRM system. What was and with Podio, as we all know, those rules are completely broken because it can be any of those things, all of those things together combined with everything else. So what did you think when you first were coming into Podio that it was supposed to be? And how surprised were you with, like, Bavo, as you were sort of saying, like, oh shit, it can do this. Have you both felt and I'll go to Tim first. Have you both felt this kind of like, what the fuck? Holy wow, it can do everything moment? Or what was been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, when I first arrived at Podio, part of my interview process was to basically become accustomed to it. And then Pete set me some what seemed like a complicated task at the time, but was fairly simple in hindsight. Is that Podio is like, like you say, when I first arrived at it, I thought, well, this is a way of structuring data. I mean, I think, and that's basically, I guess it kind of is what it is in some ways. So I don't think I think perhaps it was purposefully not described as anything by Pete or Izzy specifically. They just said it's this thing, and go and find out what it is, basically. And when I came to it and I could move these different fields, date fields, title fields, text fields, whatever it was, calculation fields, I had no idea what that was when I first arrived to it. So I was like, well, what's
this? It don't work anyway, so don't worry about it.
2 plus 2. It's true. 2 plus 2. What's that? Is that going to give me 4? I don't know. But so that was my first. When I first arrived to Podio, I was like, okay, well, what is this? And that was my expectation. That was my sort of expectation as I came to the interviews. Like, okay, so they're going to ask me to take some information and structure it somehow, because that seems to be what Podio does. So it wasn't described as a CRM or a project management tool or any of those things. In hindsight, in answer to your question, have I had like a aha, like, whoa, that kind of moment? Yeah, sure. When I see, it mostly comes from when I see Izzy or Pete's, because I'm sure Mike does the same thing, but these are the people I've seen their work of. And I've seen the different contexts that they've used Podio, and they go like all the different ways that it can be used. It's sort of like going, okay, well, this is a database. And if I forget PWA, which is a huge part of what makes Podio useful in some ways, it just structuring data is really useful. And then being able to see it quite nicely in a nice UI is quite nice. Because when I was learning how to develop, we touched on databases, and we used mostly code-based databases where it was a bit sort of behind the curtain. You couldn't really see, unless you tapped in the right keys, you couldn't really see what you were looking at. You certainly couldn't use the mouse, because obviously it wasn't an interface. So Podio for me was like, I can see what I'm doing. I can see the data that I'm putting in. I can see the labels. I can see the items and the values. So that for me was like, oh, this is great, because I actually never really liked that part of the coding part of not being able to see what I was doing. So for me, that was what Podio was. And then PWA, I'm sure, it's just another conversation, I think.
Well, I'll go to Bavo first, and then we'll touch on PWA, actually. So go ahead, Bavo.
Yeah. No, well, it looked a bit like a data set, like a big collection of interconnected Excel files, something like that. So, and the interface,
not that far off from what it is. I mean,
yeah, yeah. But so, and the interface was empty, and so it was like a boring set of data, and then but you could do everything with it. And once you start actually seeing how things are built, then you start realizing, okay, you can actually build something with it. And especially when with PWA, like that, you can build an app that can fill in all kinds of information automatically, and you just click a button and it's like making an application with just Globiflow and Podio. That was really surprising. That is so that for something that normally I would think, okay, this needs this and this and this and this and this and this and this field. It's just like, okay, here's the button, and all the fields are filled in from referenced apps.
Have the two of you been surprised? I'm so sorry for interrupting you. Have the two of you been surprised by just how much automation you can squeeze into business processes?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. It's amazing, right? I mean, I'm used to it now, but I still sometimes when we turn over a system to one of the clients, and they're just like they're just like, holy shit, because all of this. Yeah. All of the automation and the workflow and just every 5 minutes you save by having something presented to you with everything filled in properly and blah, 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 and all these manual things, and, a process which a monkey could do by filling in paperwork and creating a PDF and emailing it to someone takes a human being 15 minutes. And, that must, as part of your understanding of Podio, PWA is necessarily going to play a big part of it. How has you kind of mentioned, Bavo, I think you said you can now read you can read brick by brick, etc. Kind of like when you're a musician. If you're a musician, people always wondered why you could read a score.
Sure.
A score on a plane and just be like, I got it. Like, it's fine. I'm good. And other people would be like you can read that. But so with PWA, how has the experience of kind of getting to know PWA been?
Wow, it's a roller coaster, PWA. In some ways, it's like a dream come true. In other ways, it's a sort of head against the brick wall moment. So some of it works beautifully, and some of it you go like, well, why does it do that? Why do I have to do that first? I think more and more over the last 4 weeks specifically, I've been in this job this is my 8th week, I think. So over the last 4 weeks, I think that the first 4 weeks was me just getting to know everything. Then the last 4 weeks has been quite PWA focused, and more it's kind of gone, okay, now I get why you have to do that. It sort of makes sense. To begin with, I learned in this boot camp that I did, we did everything in a text editor. So you had to write everything. So the block system in some ways feels very rigid, and it's rigid for a reason. I kind of understand why it is, but it's almost frustrating if you go like, I'd really like to do that then, or I'd like to use this, in this case, PHP function, and it's not available. Although there's some frustrations, but at the same way, you've got to go, but I don't have to deal with authentication. I don't have to deal with, like all this other stuff that obviously PWA deals with. And so it's a bit of a push and a pull, swings and roundabout situation for me.
Babo?
Yeah, it's always thinking of how I'm going to construct it. So because the danger of the pitfall of Podio, and probably also the great thing about Podio is like it's so flexible that you can build anything, and so you can also build really shitty systems. So when working with Globiflow on tickets, I get this good practice of making the flows as simple as possible, and also splitting up. So like having short create and update flows, and then having manual flows that do just this task is for this manual flow, and this task is for that manual flow, and that way it's easier to understand the structure of it. Instead of having this super long flow that if this happens then do this, and if that happens then do that, and if this happens then do that, and so they can sometimes become extremely long. And the process has become, for my also a learning curve, has become of shortening them where possible, and I think that's a very good practice to start with.
Have you both found, sorry, just to follow up on what you're just saying,
yeah.
I'm an interrupting bastard, by the way, so like,
no worries.
And it's my podcast, so I'll fucking do it if I want to, right? Have you both found that as you've grown in your PWA, you're supposed to call it PWA now, Bavo. Trust me, I'm with you on the Globiflow bit, but I'm getting used to calling it PWA now. Actually, I'm there now. So have you found that as you develop your PWA and potentially your Proc Fu, that isn't one we'll get in today, but your PWA knowledge, your understanding of why Podio data hierarchy needs to be certain ways, it's sort of like you level up your learning here, which makes you go, ooh, and then you kind of, it's a constant evolution, because the more you start to build what I would say is more advanced workflow, more complex workflows that maybe need to work together or need to work across a larger environment, the more your understanding of Podio structure and what is going to work and what isn't evolves. So do you feel like every time you level up in your PWA understanding, you're leveling up in your Podio understanding as well?
Somewhat, yeah. The way apps are referenced, and to think of, maybe also I learned to think of, I should make a view for that first, and then pick that view. A few things like that. But like, I don't think I have gotten to the point you were explaining, that you really see. I had already a good basic understanding, so no big changes yet. But I've also haven't done too complex projects yet. Yeah,
You're the start. Tim,
we'll be getting there.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of on a similar train as Bavo, where I'm going. If I write a flow in PWA and I want to get hold of a piece of information from Podio, I guess I'm impatient, I suppose, in the sense of just, I need that piece of information, go and get it for me. In some ways, I'm just like, if I'm going to use you go and do this thing for me, and then I want to do what I want to do on it. So in some ways, I'm spoiled, I guess, in like, I want it to do everything for me, and then I'll just say, I'll take this, and this, and I want to add that to that and that, or whatever I'm doing, and then I want to update that item, and I want you to do everything else for me, please. And it's not quite. I don't know if it. So in that sense, I'm not quite there in the way that you're saying. Yeah, you need to balance up the sort of the architecture of Podio and how you've designed your database or your apps or whatever, to how you write a flow. I don't think I'm not quite there with that balance, or with that sort of realization, I guess. Maybe.
What, after 8 weeks, you're not there yet? I'm gonna have a word with fucking Pete, man. Like, I don't know. No, but I think you'll find as you guys continue to grow your skills, you will probably come up with your own style, and it may be one you slightly inherit from Mike and Pete and Izzy, because you will inherit is it's, you know, their companies, so they're going to
Sure.
enforce a certain element of style, but you'll also come up with your own feel for what is good, you know, we sort of like, we know it when we see it, and we know it when we feel it, and I'm sure you'll find you know, that you've got that. Just out of curiosity, as people who are, you know, only a few months into your Podio journey, do you have anything that you just really that really you don't like, or things that you found really frustrating that you had to kind of work to get over? Just out of curiosity. You may not, and that's fine, but sometimes people do, and I'm curious.
Text and writing and the description field, so the text, the multi-line text field. If I'm a writer, you know, and I'm not, so Mike is an ITer. He thinks in like very short pieces of text. I write out all kinds of ideas and stuff, and then I want to rearrange and I cut and paste and put this here and put that there and drag and drop, and also, yeah, I'm a bit of a chaotic person, collecting ideas from everywhere. So if you do that type of planning in a Podio app, it's terrible. So you write something, you style it a bit, because I'm like, for example, I take a title, I want it to have this color because it's visual recognition, especially if it's long. Then I copy and paste something, style is gone. I have to rearrange that. So that one doesn't work too well. The super menu helps a bit. The super menu extension a bit. So I've learned for more complex planning and ideas, to just move out of Podio for a short while, and then so keep that out and just have a summary in Podio or something and a link. Read this blog post about connecting Notion to Podio, which is something I'd like to try.
Andreas.
But the thing is that I started experimenting with Notion then, and I was doing too much in Notion, and then I returned to Podio again. So yeah. So in the end, it's just going to be for just a few things. Like, for example, if you content planning, like for a newsletter or for website articles and things, which is also what I'm doing there. Content planning does not work well in Podio. So I just add the links, but I make sure I keep the overview in Podio. Yeah.
Tim?
Yeah. For my end, I guess my main thing is, as you already kind of touched on, was the calculation fields. They sometimes take quite a long time to do something, and then you have to sort of, I guess it's one of the quirks of Podio, but maybe that's something they should just get hold of, which is you kind of have to put a timeout or whatever. You have to just give it some time to sort things out, which just makes everything really slow. If you're a client, you want something to happen quite quickly. If it's slow, it feels inefficient and kind of old in some ways. If you're, you know, the slower something is, the older it feels in my head, at least. So yeah. The quicker something is, the more modern it feels, the more contemporary or whatever. So I think they need to sort that out. PWA wise, I'm so used to seeing different colors. PWA just is quite a bland set of colors. Yeah. And I wish, for example, an if and an end if had the same color. So they were different colors to the rest of the blocks. If was blue, end if is blue. For each is red, end or whatever it's called, continue something is also red. So there's some kind of matching up of the colors. Just give me something.
No, you know, I'm only laughing. I'm only laughing. No, I'm not laughing at your concept. I'm only laughing because right now, in smartphone, I'm working on a project internally where we are redesigning the call flow system. And one of the things we're doing is bringing each type of block is going to have its own color, so that you have a visual reference to the type of block you're using. Yeah. And so I'm not laughing because I think it's a dumb idea. I'm laughing because we're doing this just right now in smartphone.
You're doing it. Yeah, and it probably won't be that hard to do through some kind of Chrome extension or something, right? Like, the super menu and things is, I've not written a Chrome extension, so I have no idea how difficult it is, but it seems like something that would be quite easy to do. but who knows if it is.
Well, as a Chrome extension, maybe, but I mean, I can tell you right now that I mean, you can usually put a skin on a developed system. You know, change the visuals as long as you're not changing the overall functionality or anything. The skin can usually be done relatively easily. It's when you start screwing around with everything else that it becomes, it's people sometimes are like, well, can't you just put this inside of that and put this over there? And you're like, yeah, okay, just that. I'll see you in 80 hours. Come on, you're killing me
Yeah,
here.
sure.
All right.
Has anything we've said surprised you, Jordan? Is it like out of interest?
No, I think it's just interesting. I think it's you both. I'll tell you what did surprise me, and I wonder if this is because you're both working within the environment you're working, or maybe it's your backgrounds, but you both came with a database heavy feel to you, in a sense of like, you both describe Podio. Most people will come to me and describe Podio as a business thing, like a CRM or a project management or whatever. You both came right in with this notion of like, of data and tables and data, that's what Podio was to you. And that surprised me a little, because most people, when they first come into Podio, or unless they're data scientists or people who build databases in SQL or other fucking systems, most people don't think of their data in that way. And you both kind of came to the field with that in your brains, but maybe that's also slightly biased by the companies you're both gone into are people who are going to talk about it like that all the fucking time. I mean, Izzy won't shut up about it, right? I mean,
sure, yeah, you try.
Yeah.
So that surprised me, but it's fun to. I don't remember how Podio was. I saw a screenshot the other day of Podio when I first got involved with it. What it looked like, and it's not that dissimilar, by the way. But there were some big differences, and it really took me back, and it's nice to think of when I first got involved with Podio. And I think what's interesting about this conversation is, is getting a perspective of people who are new to Podio and understanding maybe some of to me, my biggest takeaway is, if you're going to bring people into Podio, particularly into an environment where it's already built pretty well, you need to give them some method of playing to understand the fundamentals of Podio. If you're going to train your staff to really be able to use your system well, they kind of have to play and get to know Podio. That's what I take out from this, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think it also, like you say with the bias, I think it actually, obviously there is a bias to maybe myself and how me and Bravo have come to it, but also we haven't found Podio. We've been sort of led to it. I'm going to speak for myself. Someone said, right, I've got this job, you need to use this platform. And I have gone, whereas I've listened to other podcasts of yours, Jordan, where people have gone like, oh, I found Podio, dabbled with it, left it, came back again. There was a bit more sort of organicness about it or something. Whereas we've sort of just gone, somebody's gone to us, sorry, this is what we're using. You got to learn how to use it. And you just sort of crack on and work out what's what.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, listen, guys, I really appreciate you coming on. I will, of course, for those listening right now, I will, of course, pop both company websites into the podcast page and into the description of the podcast so that you can find both. I mean, Quivvy and Quivvy Tools. Quivvy is a consultancy. Quivvy Tools is an amazing system for that you can really understand your Podio system in a way that no other system will let you do. And I highly recommend you check it out. And of course, Future Solutions like Quivvy are a great consultancy. And, they have a tremendous, they're based in the UK. Bavo, you're based in Belgium.
Yeah. That's it.
And they are our two phenomenal partners who have a long history of building great things in Podio, and I highly recommend you check them out as well. So guys, thank you so much for giving us your insight as newbies to Podio. A really interesting journey, and it was also a pleasure to meet both of you.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
You've been listening to Supercharged with Jordan Samuel Fleming. Subscribe today on iTunes, Google Play, or Spotify for your weekly dive into how you can supercharge your business by making it powered by Podio. Be sure to check out our website, wearegamechangers.com, where you can learn more and arrange a 30-minute call with Jordan to help you understand how Podio supercharges you.